because there's a high level of restiveness in the public sector. Mr. Speaker, I want to then speak about the FinSAC Commission. By the Minister's own recollection, between 2009 and 2017, approximately $150 million were allocated to the FinSAC Commission, which had some clear objectives. One of them being to furnish a report. Yet, over a decade later, despite having received the funding and had many extensions, we still do not have a report. Now, I welcome the Minister's intent to publish the archives and the documents from the FinSAC Commission. But really, we need an explanation as to why there's no final report. FinSAC has been hotly debated. It's been a hot button issue. It's been politically divisive. It has been, it has had such an impact on the economic direction of the country that something as important as that should have a report. And the Minister says he will have a specially curated website, and I believe you said you will try to do, my terms, a skit or something. It's not a skit. All right, well, let me withdraw. A documentary, all right. A documentary, all right? He said a documentary. What is important, and my concern is that you obviously can't represent everything. And it's important that all the facts and a true representation is done in those documentaries. Because the reality, maybe apart from academics, nobody's going to throw through hundreds and thousands of pages, right? So people are going to rely on that documentary. And it has to be done in a way that is transparent and doesn't suit any particular agenda. Yeah. And so, Minister, we really are disappointed that there is no report for the public, for the benefit of the public. No report for the benefit of the public. But given the route that you have chosen to deal with it, please ensure that what is done fairly and objectively. Mr. Speaker, the Minister spent some time on Tuesday looking at the history of the economic performance of the country. But very often, whenever the history of our country is told, we tend to neglect a period from 2007 to 2011. And I think it is important for me to put in context what we inherited when we came in 2012. We recall that years from 2007 to 2010, there was 14 consecutive quarters of negative growth. We achieved a mere 1.5% growth in 2011. And we understand there was a global recession, so we know that would have been part of it, not all of it. Right? During this period, public debt, unemployment, and poverty all increased. And these are not me saying it. These are the statistics published by PIOJ and other economic sources. This was exacerbated by poor fiscal management because the government of the day abandoned the standby IMF agreement, and that affected. Abandon, well, if you want me to use a different term.
No, use a different term.
Okay, abandon the standby agreement, and this was confirmed by the IMF in their Article 4 staff report. This meant that we were not just affected by IMF funding, but all the other multilaterals, which include the IDB, the EU, the World Bank, all withdrew support. So really the international financial community had turned its back on Jamaica in 2011. And really, when we came in 2012, we inherited a situation where the government had no agreement with the IMF and really was cut out of the international financial community. Our debt to GDP was 134%, and we were or viability of a nation was at stake. When we came in 2012 under the leadership of Portia Simpson Miller, with Peter Phillips as finance minister, we managed to renegotiate a new IMF agreement with the support of our international allies, the Black Caucus in the US, which provided a financial lifeline for the country. In 2013, the IMF agreed to provide the necessary financial support, although insisting on stringent austerity measures. Many doubted our ability as a country to meet those conditions, but through careful management and the implementation of robust economic reforms, Jamaica successfully met all the IMF requirements and provided stability in the economy. The Prime Minister, who was the leader of the opposition then, used to say that the PMPs focused on passing the IMF test but failing the people's test. But the reality was the passing of those tests and our adherence to fiscal discipline and our efforts in reducing the debt that handed the JLP an economy in 2016 which was more stable and which had more financial fiscal space. During our tenure, we undertook a challenging debt restructuring and committed to maintaining a 7.5% primary budget surplus. By the time we left office, we had reduced the debt to GDP to 120%. We upheld an unparalleled level of fiscal discipline, tightened fiscal policies, and rolled out a comprehensive economic reform program. The program focused on structural reforms to stimulate growth and employment. There were significant fiscal adjustments backed by broad fiscal reforms and debt reduction to ensure the sustainability of public debt while safeguarding our financial stability. We also, importantly, enhanced the fiscal rules to guarantee prudent fiscal management.
Members' time has expired. House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, the members' time having been expired, I beg to move that the member's time be extended sufficiently to allow him to complete his presentation. May it please you, Mr. Speaker.
As indicated by the House Leader, those in favor? Those against, the ayes have it. Member, you may continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank the members. And I won't be here for 4 hours, so you do 4. I won't be here for 4 hours. All the time you want. Madam Speaker, we enhanced the fiscal rules to guarantee prudent fiscal management. In 2014-15, the Public Bodies Management and Accountability Act and the Financial Administration and Audit Act were amended to enforce new fiscal rules, thus strengthening the fiscal responsibility framework. Further, we initiated reforms to grant the BOJ operational independence in setting monetary policy, and the primary, I said commenced. 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 I didn't say we completed it. You completed it, but we commenced, I said. Commenced. All right? Commenced. To grant operational independence, and the primary focus on inflation targeting. Mr. Speaker, we supported the creation of EPOC, comprising representatives from the business community, trade union, civil society, and other groups to monitor the progress of reforms and the government's fiscal policy. Mr. Speaker, it was our commitment to macro-fiscal stability and prudent fiscal management which rescued the economy. The structural and fiscal reforms we implemented laid the groundwork for the positive macroeconomic stability we enjoy today. We are dedicated to economic stability, Mr. Speaker. We were then and we remain. We remain. The PMP as a government demonstrated fiscal discipline in its last administration and we are committed to continuing that practice. We met our fiscal targets previously, and we will do so again. So, Mr. Speaker, I say it because there are some who want to create a narrative about what the last PMP administration did or did not do. And I believe it's important for persons to understand what we did, the groundwork that we laid, which is the basis on which we enjoy the stability that we exist today. I want to turn now to the Jamaican economy. Despite the positive economic indicators, the reality on the ground in Jamaica tells a different story. The narrative of macroeconomic stability has not translated into substantial improvements in the lives of the majority of the Jamaican people. The most Jamaicans have to deal with the frustrating hand-to-mouth, can't make ends meet struggle. That is their reality. A significant percentage of our population still live paycheck to paycheck, for those who get a paycheck. And for those who don't, it is even more difficult. Mr. Speaker, this is the first year that I have not brought my food pricing charts. I know you were looking forward to seeing them, Nigel, right? And you know why I never bring them? Because the reality is I don't need to bring them. The people have been feeling the effects of the increases in the cost of living. I don't need to tell them what they are, because they deal with it every single day when they go to the corner shop, when they go to the wholesale, or when they go to the supermarket. The reality is that
complain about Nigel's speech, that there was nothing for your constituency. You big rat.
Absolutely. In standing finance, he got the minister committed to fixing up back room. So you got back room. So you're good. All right? All right. Mr. Speaker, the basic reality is that consumers are getting less and paying more. Prices are high and wages are low. And for the most vulnerable, life is precarious. There are people who wake up in the morning and them don't know how they're going to put pot on fire. Them don't know how they're going to make ends meet. Them don't know how they're going to send the picnic to school. Them don't know where the bus fare come from or the taxi fare. That represents the reality of the majority of Jamaican people. So the reality is that we grew up believing patty is affordable food. Basic patty at $250. That's our beef. If a $300 for chicken, or $280. A loaf of bread anywhere between $400 to $500. And if you want a box lunch, the burger box is $500. The coffin box is about $750. And if you get the big box, you're touching $1,000. That is the reality that people face. So how are those who are at the bottom of our society going to survive? Mr. Speaker, if we look at PATH, which is supposed to deal with the most vulnerable, we acknowledge that there's been a marginal increase over last year, and that there is 17.7 billion. Huh? An increase. All right. There is an increase. All right. The minister said 30. When I come to what it breaks down to, I want you to tell me about it. Yeah? There is an increase over last year with 17.7 billion for PATH in this year. 60% of the allocation is earmarked for the conditional cash transfers, while the remaining goes for the breakfast and cook lunch program. But as you know, the PATH funds have not kept pace with inflation. Of the 17 billion, 10.78 is for the conditional cash transfer, which is meant to target 284,228 people. That works out to $37,940 per person per year. On a weekly basis, that works out to $730 per week per person. Or on a daily basis, that works out to $104 per person per day. Per day. So, Mr. Speaker, if you take what the weekly allowance is of $730. That would not be able to provide one low-cost nutritional meal for one person for one day. But that's the allocation for it. So I acknowledge, yes, there's been an increase. But even with the increase, this is what the most vulnerable in our society face. Mr. Speaker, I know we are in a tight financial situation, but we have to do better. We have to do better for the most vulnerable in our society. The low priority given to inequality and vulnerability in the society matches the fact that this government has almost entirely focused its national security response on the use of SOEs and ZOZOs as a primary way to control crime and violence. We know that there have been significant increases in the budget to the JDF and the JCF, but very little, if none at all, has been allocated for social intervention programs. While we welcome the increase to both the JDF and the JCF, we are concerned that the response to crime and violence has been disproportionately spent on crime control to the detriment of crime prevention. So if we look at the CSJP, Citizens, Security and Justice Program, this was aimed at conflict resolution, social inclusion. This ended in 2021. You had another program, the Jamaica Integrated Community Development Program, which was aimed at enhancing access to infrastructure and services and to contribute towards community safety. This ended in 2022. There have been no major initiatives aimed at making communities safer. Last week at Standing Finance, I asked the Minister of National Security that there was no, I indicated, that there was no clear allocation for social intervention programs. His response to me was that those programs have been rolled up into the budgets of different ministries. That's what his response was. But, Mr. Speaker, that dilutes the effectiveness of these initiatives because there's no central entity directing their implementation. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to give a real example. Well, what I would like, for me, my level of understanding may be limited. So you need to help me. No, mine may be limited. But let me tell you as a member of Parliament, right now I'm impacted by two communities in my constituency that there's been an uptick in violence. And when you look at the reasons, they tend to all start from what you might call fairly trivial reasons. But what I would say, there is a need for an intervention beyond what the security forces can do. And quite frankly, the security forces need that support in the work that they do. So for example, you need counseling services for the families of the victims of violence. You need persons who can interact with, quote unquote, the persons of influence. So the question I would ask, Mr. Speaker, in my case, who do I turn to and call for that kind of assistance? In the past, I knew I could reach out to the PMI as an example, or others to come into a community that had a flare-up. Now we have to depend on church leaders and other things to do that. Mr. Speaker, we can't just try to suppress and control crime. We must also prevent it. We need the structures. We need structures in our community that our communities can draw on to diffuse conflicts and teach our people skills of conflict resolution. We need to bring back community policing, initiatives to address conflict and community safety, and those which seek to improve basic infrastructure, which makes it safer in more vulnerable communities across Jamaica. So as we tackle the crime and violence problem, it can't just be an investment in response to and the control of crime. There has to be an investment in the prevention of criminal activity. Mr. Speaker, I want to turn my attention to public transportation and the impact that it has on productivity. A good part of what frustrates us on a day-to-day basis is also what keeps us as a nation stuck in the low-wage, low-productivity model. The deficiencies of our public transportation system affects everybody. It affects the employees who need to get to work. It affects the employers who are trying to run their businesses. It affects our students who need to get to school on time. In fact, everybody who needs to move around in an efficient way. It doesn't matter if we build new roads or expand existing ones, because all we're doing is adding more vehicles to the already overcrowded roads. And we can see it right here in Kingston. In the past decade, there's been significant expansion of a number of roadways. Significant, and we supported them. But the reality is that when you move, we plan them actually. The reality is that anywhere you go after 3 o'clock in the afternoon or 4 o'clock, you're going to be stuck, right? So the fact is, between our road network and the deficiencies in our transportation system, whether you take public transportation or whether you own a car, you're not going anywhere fast. Literally, we are stuck in long lines of traffic, whether you have to go near or whether you have to go far. Whether you're in a bus or whether you have to take a route taxi, you're still going to sit in traffic. And when you get to where you're going, you feel miserable. If you're not a taxi, you squeeze up with a whole heap of people, and your whole demeanor change because you're vexed. That's the reality. Mr. Speaker, an effective, efficient transportation system that allows our people to get where they're going quickly and cost effectively is essential to raising productivity. Productivity. Now, Mr. Speaker, I know that in the budget, 9.3 billion has been allocated to the JUTC. I know that 100 buses have been ordered, and the minister said he hopes to get them before the beginning of the next school term. And I think all of us hope that we achieve that target. But I want to give you some data which explains the disinvestment in JUTC and the impact it has on the traveling public. When we left office in 2016, the JUTC carried 62 million passengers that year.
Management.
62.
Proper management.
The projection for 2024, as in the public bodies document, has the JUTC carrying 15 million. It's not my data. You can check it. 1/4 of what existed 8 years ago is carried by the JUTC. Right? Now, it's not that the people have gone anywhere, but the reality is we don't have the buses to carry the people. And while there's been that disinvestment in JUTC, we have also doubled the number of licenses for private parking. Yes, we have. So what has happened as a result? Is that you have more taxis on the road seeking passengers, right? And because the taxis are competing with each other for the passengers, we have that chaos on the road. So, Minister, even with the 100 buses, right now JUTC is doing 180? About 180 buses out of, when we left in 2016, 450.
Wow.
180.
180 from 450. Bad management.
180 out of 450. Now, if you add,
And they still have the guy running it.
180 out of 450. Now, if you add the 100 that are coming, it's not that Portmore, listen. All right. Well, he doesn't have to confirm it. I talked to people in Portmore and Spanish Town. And them have to wait 2 hours to get a bus. And then let me explain what happens. When them can't get, when them waiting, them don't want to lose them work. Because they can't go work late every day. So them have to jump in at the route taxi and pay twice the fare. Or go in at the coaster bus. So you're licking the productivity and you're also impacting cost of living. Because they're paying more to move around. Because the people of them can't go to school late every day. So the parents are forced to pay more to get to their destination. We are moving a quarter of the passenger load on the JUTC now as opposed to 8 years ago. A quarter. And let me say, we know that no public transportation system makes a profit. No. And we don't expect it. But what we expect is an efficiently run system that can move people around. And the reality is that there has to be a comprehensive review of the operations of JUTC. There's been a disinvestment in JUTC, so they can't maintain the buses. They can't buy spare parts. So even when you get the 100 new, it's not that 100 going to be added to the fleet, because you have some that going to drop out. Because they've been running a bus run 16 hours a year, 16 hours a day. And so many of the new buses are replacing old buses. Mr. Speaker, this inefficient public transportation system leads to low productivity, which impacts our economic outcomes. Mr. Speaker, while reinvesting in the JUTC and restructuring its management and operations to a service delivery focused model is necessary, it is not sufficient. Even if we had the best functioning bus system, our urban centers are growing at such a rate that we need to explore other modes of transportation wherever they are feasible. Mr. Speaker, successive governments have looked at different options, have studied the problems, but we haven't necessarily implemented them. And while the idea of a light rail is not a new system, is not a new idea, Mr. Speaker, in our view, time has come for the introduction of light rail. I know the member, he's not here, from Central Clarendon, was a strong advocate of that, of what he called the multimodal system. And give him credit. I know he pursued it, we never got to fruition, but I know he was passionate about that. But since last year when I raised this issue of the introduction of a light rail in my constituency, State of the Constituency debate, I have been flooded with ideas, concept documents, and proposals for a light rail system from people all over the world. Somebody in the UK reached out to me and has sent me a set of documents. They were interested in doing a PPP with the government back in the day. They have done some detailed work on it. And what they have looked at is how we can improve connectivity within the Kingston metropolitan area, connecting some specific hubs like Spanish Town, Portmore, Halfway Tree. You could look at running something from Spanish Town, stop in Portmore, and come into downtown Kingston. Because the majority of the vehicles that come from Spanish Town and Portmore come in the morning and then go back out in the evening. And it's just so hard on people to wake up at 4 and 5 o'clock in the morning because they want to reach school on time and spend 2 hours in traffic. So we can look at how we can connect those major hubs. Crossroads, Papine. Look at something from Papine to Halfway Tree, from Constant Spring to Halfway Tree as an example. This would not only alleviate traffic congestion, reduce carbon emissions, but boost productivity. Productivity. So, Mr. Speaker, by providing a reliable and environmentally friendly transportation system, we can enhance our economic opportunities. and improve quality of life and contribute to the overall improvement in productivity in the country. Mr. Speaker, I want to turn a little to this issue of productivity. It has been a topic that has been on the tongues of many. In the Heart Trust NTA, we have enrollments of just over 100,000 people a year, with more than 50,000 who are certified. But we still haven't been able to tackle the productivity problem. There are members of the private sector who say we don't have enough skilled workers and we need to import workers. But is there a misfit between what skills are being trained and the needs of the business community? And does the system allow people to upskill while they work? But importantly, are we correctly looking at the so-called labor problem in a holistic way? And how does this measure up when we know Jamaicans who leave Jamaica, who we might consider to be unproductive, but they go elsewhere and they become very productive members of different societies? So let's look more at the productivity problem and how we measure labor productivity. Businesses measure productivity by looking at how many labor hours it takes to produce a unit of output. So for example, how many phone calls a worker handles per hour, or how many sales transactions you do in a shift, or how many hours it takes to cultivate and reap a ton of yam. At a national level, labor productivity is measured by how many labor hours it takes to produce total output, called GDP. By this measure, our financial and manufacturing sectors would be viewed as the most productive. Combined, they employ 8% of the labor force. The others, which would include agriculture, tourism, construction, and the BPO, would be considered in relative terms to have lower productivity. The labor in these sectors will not become more productive by just increasing the skills of the workers. And I want to say that again. The labor in these sectors will not become more productive by simply increasing the skills of the workers. Very critically, the income from the economic activity also needs to increase relative to the effort of labor. So if you remain in what is a low-skilled environment and you stay there, while your skills may improve, you are not going to be able, that person, to generate more economic activity unless you can move further up the value chain. And so in assessing what we define as the productivity problem, we also have to assess whether the problem exists in the low value added nature of many of the industries that exist in the country. So let's not just put it on the workers. Yes, we need to ensure that people are literate, numerate, that they can function in their jobs. But there's a bigger and broader issue of how we transition many of these sectors from their low value add to being able to produce services where you can earn more. So it means the problem is bigger than a productivity problem. The problem is we have been feeling the effects of a failure to change what I would call the extractive nature of our economy. How do we change the structure of the economy so it can benefit people equitably? The budget, as presented, points to more of the same. More of the same, where persons are going to be stuck in low wages, low value-added sectors. And so the challenge that we face, Mr. Speaker, is how do we nurture a people's economy for development and growth, where growth is not pursued as an end in itself, but as a means to improving the well-being of the majority of the people. So it means that, yes, we have to pay attention to the macroeconomic indicators, but we do so from the perspective of how those macroeconomic indicators will translate to uplifting the lives of the majority. So it means public policy and good macroeconomic indicators must relate to people feeling a positive difference in their lives. And so, Mr. Speaker, the time has come for a different economic model for Jamaicans. A model which broadens the economic ownership base in an equitable way, which includes considerations for gender equity, people with disabilities, or those who are shut out from the formal sectors. It must widen and guarantee access to basic needs and national resources. It must protect against the impact of climate change, and it must make Jamaicans want to live, work, grow, and grow old with dignity here in our country. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to talk about what we need to do to leave and transition from the low-wage, low-tech economy. While we welcome the investments in improving physical infrastructure, it is equally important to invest in our human capacity. And the budget as presented is lopsided to physical infrastructure. And I just want to say something on physical infrastructure, Mr. Speaker. We welcome the improvements in and the slated capital expenditure for our hospitals. But I'm saying to the Minister of Finance, we can't make Spanish Town and UWI Hospital run the way that Cornwall run. No. We can't make it run, sir. You can't have a project that starts at $2 billion and end up at $21 billion. And we can't see an end in sight. So I'm saying, as we are spending billions in improving our healthcare infrastructure, please ensure, as the custodian of our finances, that these funds are managed properly. That we have competent people as project managers, that the contractors selected have the experience and the expertise to get the job done. You are spending significant sums on the capital side to improve our infrastructure. But we must ensure that we get value for the money spent. And it's important, as the Minister of Finance, that you play a role in overseeing that. It's not your ministry, but you allocate the funds, and you are the custodian. So, Mr. Speaker, I said this last year. The low-wage, low-tech economic model that we have been pursuing for decades will only deliver what it has been delivering, which is low growth and the negative social consequences. And we know what those are. There's a widening of the gulf between the rich and the poor, and the relatively very high crime rates. And when you hear people say we can't continue so, what they're recognizing is that there's a need for a change in how our economy is structured. So we have to transition from a dependence on a low-wage, low-value-added formal sector that exports primarily raw materials or services in the case of tourism or BPO, and move to a situation where with an estimated 500,000 people who are in our informal sector, which represents about 35% of our workforce. And so while we increase investments in those areas, it reduces unemployment. And we have the lowest level of unemployment, which is at 4.2%. But what happens is, even though we reduce unemployment, it doesn't do enough to raise the standard of living significantly because the jobs remain primarily at the lower end. And yes, there are people who have made the transition in BPOs, in tourism, from not being agents to being supervisors. But they probably represent 5% of the workforce. The majority, the significant majority, remain at the low wage level. So yes, having low unemployment is good. Because everybody would say it's better to have a job than none. But I would say there are Jamaicans who have now decided and taken a decision that it's better them stay at them yard and work for certain types of jobs. Yes. Well, it means you're not on the ground in your constituency if you don't hear it. Many of them have decided, have opted out of the workforce. They have opted out of the workforce. No, they're not working at home. They're just not working. They have opted out.
You don't know these things,
so Mr. Speaker, our reality is that as a small island economy, with a tiny domestic market, low labor productivity, weak educational outcomes, a weak tradition of firms investing in product development and innovative research, with weak linkages to global value chains. That is what our reality is today. But that doesn't need to be our destiny. The task for us as a nation, and let me say this, I'm not saying it is any party's fault, because this has been structural for a long period. So to be clear, I'm not trying to blame the government for this, because these problems have existed. But we have to recognize them. Recognize that if we want to get out of this low wage, there has to be a deliberate policy to do so. Deliberate policy to do so. And if you look at the sectors, and I'm saying it, that's why I'm saying it's not, I'm not blaming one side. If you look at the industries that employ the most people, construction, BPO, tourism, right? Bauxite may be an exception because that's relatively highly skilled, but relatively low numbers, right? So, but when you look at those sectors, 95% of the people are in low-paying jobs. So yes, they are working. So when people say to you, them can't feel your prosperity, what they mean is even though they have a job, it is at the minimum wage level. And so, yes, and so they live in hand to mouth as a result of that existence. We have to transform that so that we can raise living standards, that we can increase value add, and that we can create an economy. Huh? I'm going to tell you what the process is. I'm going to tell you what the process is. I'm going to tell you what the process is. Huh?
Your time come and leave.
The task for us as a nation must be to set out on a new path and to begin the journey of transition in our economy through improved productivity, which will create better paying jobs and lift the standard of living for all our people. That means we must adopt a comprehensive set of policies which will strive to tap into our natural creativity and to help us lift ourselves to the highest technical levels globally. That is the only way to generate higher income sustainably and to strengthen the tax base so that we can support all the social services that we need. Mr. Speaker, that's the only sustainable way to reduce poverty and to reduce crime. I said that last year, and I'm saying it again this year because it is just as relevant. So I want to talk about how we can prepare our economy for growth. Mr. Speaker, to change the fundamentals, we need to change our approach. We need to support an ecosystem for innovation in the economy. When I look at the budget this year, and I take, for example, the Scientific Research Council, which is tasked with supporting MSMEs through research, product development, product manufacturing, trade facilitation, is getting $829 million, marginally up from last year, but still woefully inadequate as the primary agency doing research and development. Jamaica needs a major national push to help our companies to move up the value chain, to improve technology use, to upskill and retrain human resources, and to increase productivity. And I'm speaking about companies of all sizes, from our large industrial manufacturers to the MSME space, because this is going to be the major avenue for growth if nurtured and developed carefully. Mr. Speaker, we have creative, highly motivated entrepreneurs in Jamaica who can be the next Steve Jobs or the next Jeff Bezos. But the reality is that they can't move from where they are without significant support to get to the next level. We are proposing to focus the resources of JBDC, the DBJ, the SRC, and other institutions to provide technical assistance in trade agreement, negotiations, credit, financing, machinery credits, staff training, R&D in a concerted, deliberate way. Yes, I'm acknowledging that all of these agencies are doing some of these things. So I'm not going to say nothing is being done. However, it's being done in a piecemeal way. What we want to do, it is to bring them together in a focused way, in a holistic way, so that they understand how critical this is to the transformation of a new economy. Minister, you would know that there are funds that go to entities like DBJ that are not utilized. Whether it be the criteria is difficult, what I call bureaucracy, meaning somebody have to fill out an application, this and would have to get a consultant to do it, and then we have to employ somebody. So it's too difficult, quite frankly, for many of our MSMEs to access the credit and the other facilities that are there, even grants. So we have to concertedly make it easier for people to access the benefits that will make them grow, that will make them develop their businesses, and that will allow them to move to pursue higher value added activities, make global linkages, and raise their productivity. Mr. Speaker, for decades there has been a recognition by the public and successive governments that our education system is weak, and that the low-wage, low-productivity economy is a direct result of low educational outcomes. There have been studies after studies, the latest being the Patterson report, which only largely restate the conclusions and recommendations of previous reports. But it is clear that to achieve better outcomes, we must transform our education system. Big Ross, I was waiting for you to say transformational. You only get transformed. You only get transformed when we talk about back row. That is the only thing that transforms you. Mr. Speaker, before the COVID pandemic, which led to the lockdown of our schools, our education system was not set up to ensure that the majority of our children got a well-rounded education. We know that it has not produced the outcomes that we want. And if you don't get into what you might call a good school, and if your parents don't have the resources to send you to a prep school, the unfortunate reality is that the majority of our children do not get the type of education that they need. And that after being in school for 10 years, leave at 15 or 16, in many cases without being literate or numerate, or without having any marketable skill that allows them to contribute in a positive way. There is a measure, using a measure called the Learning Adjusted Years of School, LAYS, L-A-Y-S for short, which combines quantity and quality of schooling to compare educational outcomes across the country. The World Bank determined that in 2020, the average Jamaican received 7.1 years of learning adjusted years of schooling, which ranked us at 105 out of 175 countries assessed. The same report showed that Jamaica the average student lost 1.3 years of learning adjusted years of schooling during our COVID lockdown. Now, Mr. Speaker, what has been the $3 billion budgeted in this year for the capital budget for the Education Ministry is mainly to improve the conditions of primary and secondary schools. The Education Transformation Project aims to construct 6 new STEAM and 1 visual arts performance school by the year 2028-29. But, Mr. Speaker, we have to go beyond that. We have to infuse STEAM in all our schools. All our schools. It needs to become part and parcel of the curriculum. So doing 6 schools means you're almost perpetuating that divide, so to speak, because you want to attract people to the STEAM schools. You must ensure that STEAM is incorporated into every school. So Mr. Speaker, I know the Minister of Education has started through ETOC to implement the recommendations of the Patterson report. But I've encouraged her, and I'm doing so again, those quarterly updates which are provided by ETOC, that those documents be brought here to the Parliament, tabled in the Parliament, and discussed and debated here. Right? It is perhaps the most important exercise as a nation that we are doing. And while I know they do the press conferences, as I mentioned to you at Standing Finance, I must confess that I don't hear the stuff that is being done. And so I encourage you again, bring the reports here, table them, and let us discuss them here in the Parliament. I want to turn a little to how we can leverage HEART for transformation. HEART. One direct impact of the failing education system is reflected in that 42 years after the establishment of HEART, we still can't produce adequate numbers of skilled individuals to satisfy local demand. Part of the problem is not necessarily with HEART, is that the problem lies earlier on in the education system, so that the people who get into HEART don't have the basic requirements or life skills so that they can be trained. And in fact, some are probably untrainable. So we have to address the issue of literacy both in the current workforce by scaling up programs that HEART already offers, because HEART incorporated what used to be Jamaica Foundation for Lifelong Learning into their curriculum. And that we have the added component of attention to literacy. Now, I say literacy because even if you are on a construction site, there are going to be some instructions, and you are a laborer, that you're going to have to be able to read on your own, understand and comprehend and implement. So the jobs that, quote unquote, we used to say are unskilled type jobs require basic literacy. And those requirements are increasing every single day. So it's important that we as a nation prepare those persons for those types of jobs. So, Mr. Speaker, we are proposing a mass movement to fix the labor productivity through education and training. One that is data-driven and one that is done in partnership with the private sector to immediately upskill the workforce. We also need to catch those who are what I call failing up. There are a category of persons who exit the formal learning system with few or no qualifications. And they fall into the category of what is termed at-risk youth. And every single one of us in here have, to some extent or another, significant parts of our constituencies that represent people like that. Yeah. And I want to give you an example from the campaign trail. I was with the mayor, and in Franklin Town, we were campaigning. And the current mayor, the mayor of KSAC, that mayor.
Right, mayor.
That mayor. And there was a young man who was, your Monroonian friend. There was a young man who was very disgruntled and was a cuss, not now go on for him, nobody not do nothing for him. And I observed the conversation, and then I went in. So I said to him, what kind of work you can do? His first response was, me nah do no minimum wage work. I said, what kind of work you can do? And his response was, me nah do no minimum wage work. Right off the bat, that was his first response. I then said to him, what qualifications or skills you have? He said, I have 2 CXC. So I said to him, with the 2 CXC, what kind of work you think you can get? But in his mind, even with the 2 CXC, he has determined that he now does certain kind of work. So while there are vacancies of certain kinds of work, he's not interested in that kind of work. So I said to him, are you aware that we offer through expend and IUC, which I do in my constituency in collaboration with HART, a training program where you can go. You can go for 8 weeks. You spend the first 2 weeks on soft skills, conflict resolution, other things, and then the next 6 weeks are spent dealing with a technical subject, and you leave with a certification. You never know. But what he wanted from me was, where is Pernell? He wanted his farm work ticket. He wanted his farm work ticket. And the point here is not that him have any interest in farming, you know. Him just want to leave though. And I'm saying this, he represents a significant percentage of Jamaican youth who have opted out of the workforce, opted out of the formal system, and ultimately become the problem for Harris with crime and violence. Because they have to find a way to survive. And for all of us. Mr. Speaker, we have to find a way to deal with that youth. We have to give him hope. We have to give him hope that he can stay here in Jamaica, that he can get a job that he believes is valuable, that allows him to earn, in his view, more than the minimum wage, and that he can build a family, send him to them to school, and earn something for himself. But when you look at the large numbers, the 700,000 who are outside the workforce, a lot of them have made a decision to stay outside. So the reality is, Prime Minister, we don't need to import nobody. Mash down the argument. We don't need to import anybody. We have enough Jamaicans who can work in the sectors. But there's a mismatch. Yes, there's also a responsibility on the part of employers to pay wages which are livable, right? But we have a responsibility to ensure that we train those youngsters in a way that they can contribute positively to the workforce. And right now, there are too many of them who have just opted out. The member from Western Westmoreland, where my family come from, where Greenchill is, we haven't studied the impact that the closure of the sugar industry has had on that side of the country. And I'm convinced that what you experience with the level of crime is related to that. And what have we done to replace that income loss? Right? What have we done? And so your Greenchill Primary, where my grandfather used to teach, locked down for 2 or 3 days. Become unsent threat. Whenever I send the images and the news of Greenchill to my father and his sisters, them say, them not recognize the place. Marlene, you know it, because you went there. Different place, transformed in, you come from George's Plain, so you know. And you know Greenchill School. Places that have been transformed for the worse. But they need intervention. Right? They need deliberate intervention. They need special intervention because they become Harris's problem with crime and violence. And no matter how much police and soldier you send there, you can't solve the problem. So we are at one. We believe that we have to invest in the transformation of our education system so that we can have the outputs that we deserve. So, Mr. Speaker, I know some of these things are being done. I ask that Standing Finance. I run the HART program through IUC, International University of the Caribbean, and through EXED in my constituency. I'm fortunate that I have those institutions that already provide the training. So HART partners with them. And those who have the institutions are okay. But I know there are some constituencies that don't have institutions. And they are in rural communities where there is no school that can play that role or no educational institution. And so if we're going to tackle this problem, we have to have a holistic approach. We have to ramp up that at-youth risk training program, right? It's 8 weeks. It's short enough. The 1-year program, then now cut it again. The youth, them want to do something quick, get them certification and go in the workforce. And so you give them the soft skills so them learn how to deal with each other. They know how to deal with conflict resolution, how to deal with communication. So it is being done, but it has to be done at a much higher level and a more concentrated level. Mr. Speaker, I want to turn my attention and talk about character education, which is pivotal to reforming the values and attitudes of our society in general. Character education, according to the Association for Supervision and Curriculum Development, and I quote, teaching children about basic human values, including honesty, kindness, generosity, courage, freedom, equality, and respect. The goal is to raise children to become morally responsible, self-disciplined citizens. Character education. Now, 20, 30 years ago, the former Prime Minister sitting in that chair proposed what he called the Values and Attitudes Program. For various reasons, it never got off the ground. Yes, there wasn't support from the then opposition to it. I am saying right now, this needs to be infused into our curriculum. And it needs to be infused into the curriculum at the primary and the secondary levels. Because every day we see the effects of the antisocial behavior in our schools, and not just the antisocial behavior, but the establishment of gangs within schools and the level of crime and violence within schools. Of not just students fighting each other, but students fighting teachers, teachers responding. We have to, it's an untenable situation. You can't get any economic gains if the people who are the source cannot contribute positively to growing the economy. And so I'm saying to the government, take character education and infuse it in our curriculum. We believe it is important to address these problems at an early age and socialize our young people for the overall good of our nation. Mr. Speaker, one of the greatest impediments to moving Jamaica to a high-wage, high-value-added economy is the high cost of electricity. We cannot be a productive economy with the prevailing electricity rates. And governments over the years have endorsed a national renewable energy strategy, which speaks to 50% of our renewables on the grid by 2030, which is to diversify the energy mix and to reduce the cost of energy. Mr. Speaker, after 8 years in office, the government has finally issued a request for proposal to add over 100 megawatts of renewable energy to the national grid. While this is welcome, it has come 8 years too late. And I say this, Mr. Speaker, the RFP should close next month. The government estimates that by November of this year, we will select the preferred bidder. And then it will take that bidder about 24 months to build out their new plant and their capacity. So the reality is that we're not going to see any renewable energy coming on the grid at that scale for another 30 months. And as we know, the cost of energy continues to go up and may increase during this period. Mr. Speaker, to put it bluntly, this JLP administration would have completed 2 full terms before we would have added any significant renewable energy to the grid. And Mr. Speaker, I want to proffer my reason for why this exists. Right? Very often when we look at the impact of corruption, we assess it in monies which may be missing, misappropriated, or which may be gotten in a fraudulent manner. However, we rarely assess the impact of corruption on institutions and the negative impact it has on their ability to deliver on their mandate. Since 2016, we have had 4 different ministers of government who have been entrusted with the energy portfolio. In 2018, after the first minister resigned amidst the scandal at Petrojam, it resulted ultimately in the closing down of the Petroleum Corporation of Jamaica, which had significant expertise in energy and renewable energy. The next minister, who was the prime minister, held the portfolio for 9 months, and I believe he did so seeking to bring stability. But the reality is that, again, the renewable energy agenda was not addressed or didn't move forward. The third minister who came took steps to dealing with the governance issues at the ministry, and in a positive way. And I said this genuinely, I've said it to you, and I say it genuinely. And took steps in a positive way to addressing the governance issues. But again, we didn't move the renewable energy agenda forward. The fourth minister, arguably, it could be argued that he has been able to move it the most forward to the point now where we have an RFP. But the reality is, it should never take 8 years for a government to issue a request for a proposal. Should never, right? And I want to contrast, because sometimes people don't look at the difference in management. When we came in 2012, management, yes, that's what I'm saying. So hear me.
Something you don't know anything about.
Management. All right? I wouldn't take you on the track, you know. I wouldn't take you on the track. But just hear me on the management now. When we came in 2012, we issued an RFP by 2013, within 18 months of being in office. That capacity was built out by 2016. So you had content, and you had the one in Westmoreland, Retreat, Paradise. Those are the last 2 renewable energy projects. And BMR in St. Elizabeth, in Malvern. Those are the last renewable energy projects, large-scale projects that have been added to the grid. Now, you might ask why I'm talking about this. I'm talking about issues of low productivity. I'm talking about how we can transition an economy to a high value-added one, and lack of competitiveness. And there's no way we can compete as a country when we're paying 46 cents per kilowatt hour for electricity. US cents. And Trinidad might be 5 or 6, which we're not going to get to. But the reality is, if we were adding renewable energy to the grid in a timely fashion, we would have brought down the overall cost of energy. We would have met some of our environmental goals. We would have reduced our dependency on the importation of heavy fuel oil, which impacts our balance of payments in a positive way. 8 years. 8 years, and we have no renewable energy. And as I said, it will take you another 24 months before you will get to a position where you can actually see the fruits of that. But, Mr. Speaker, we believe that even with those challenges, there is something that can be done to help consumers today. Even though we may not get the renewable energy on the grid for another 24 or 30 months, we can help those consumers who want to convert their current systems into a solar rooftop system. And I want to say to the Minister of Finance, what we call the hedge tax, I know you say no hedge tax exists, but what was implemented for the purposes of a hedge, which is still being collected but not being used for the hedge.
Correct.
No, I'm not challenging the reason. I'm not challenging the reason, no. What I'm saying, given that it was put in place, I believe a portion of those funds should be set aside to allow consumers who want to come off the grid, who want to put solar on their rooftops, to be able to do so. So we can ease the pressure. I don't know the exact amount to collect, but I believe It might be 11 or 12 billion. It may be more. I don't know the amount. But you can set aside some and allow people who want to implement it. Right now, people want to do it. But the reality is that the cost is exorbitant. It can cost you anywhere between $3 and $4 million, which, quite frankly, is beyond the reach of the average Jamaican. There are some who can afford it. And yes, there are companies who are providing that as a service, providing the upfront financing, and then you pay it off down the road. There are private companies that do. But I'm saying to give a break to the Jamaican consumer, use some of that money, which was implemented for the hedge, use some of it to support a rooftop solar program so that we can ease the pressure. Because the electricity bill is the #1 bill that everybody faces. Of all your utility bills, is the #1. And while I notice the proposal that you have made from the tax perspective for those the independent providers, I don't know if it is going to be sufficient to move the needle on renewable energy. And given the lengthy process, because remember this RP is just for 100 megawatts. Another one supposed to come for, I think, 160, and then I believe JPS is going to replace some existing capacity, which is 171. So I know in another 3-4 years we're going to get there. But people buckling under the weight right now and need some relief right now. And I believe we can do something to help people with that relief. So, Mr. Speaker, in concluding, advocates of economic stability need to acknowledge that while it is a positive step, by itself alone, it is not enough to uplift the lives of the average Jamaican. The journey from mere fiscal stability to true economic transformation is essential. At the heart of this transformation is the need to address the challenges of low technological adoption, inadequate wage structures, and sluggish economic growth. What is proposed in the government's budget falls short of addressing these fundamental challenges that plague our society. And while there are elements of the budget which we agree and will support, they fail to alleviate the widespread struggles and adversities faced by the vast majority of the Jamaican people. For too long, our economy has been characterized by low wages, low technology, and low productivity. The path to improving living standards, diminishing poverty, and curbing crime lie in fundamentally transforming our economy into one that is centered on high value, advanced technology, and robust income. This pivotal change necessitates substantial investment in several critical areas. Most importantly, education, entrepreneurship, energy, and improving productivity. Mr. Speaker, on this side, we firmly believe that fiscally responsible economic transformation and creative, bold leadership are key to break free from the stagnant cycle of low growth that has affected the Jamaican economy, that has restrained our people from realizing their full potential and prevented transformation into a nation of choice to live, work, raise families, and do business. Time come. Time come. We stand ready to take on that challenge. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker,
Members.
Mr. Speaker, I now ask that the debate be suspended. I'm getting getting there. I'm getting there. Getting there. All right. Calm down. Calm down. Mr. Speaker, I now ask that the debate be suspended. However, I want to thank the member for his presentation. It's a very sober presentation. And that we look forward to next Tuesday, March 19, when the Speaker will be the leader of the opposition and member for St. Andrew Southern. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The question is that the budget debate be suspended. Those in favor? And that we continue next Tuesday, March 19, 2024, at 2 p.m. sharp. Those against, ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, it is not contemplated for us to do any further business today. I therefore ask that the House adjourns until Tuesday, March 19 at 2 p.m. sharp. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The question is that the House do now adjourn for a date to be fixed for Tuesday, March 19, 2024 at 2 p.m. Those in favor? Those against? Ayes have it. This House now stand adjourned.
$1.3 trillion. That's the figure budgeted for the fiscal year 2024-2025, which begins on April 1. The national budget is everybody's business because it impacts every Jamaican. Join PBCJ via live broadcast and on our online platforms to hear how the government is proposing to use these funds. Finance Minister Dr. Nigel Clark will open the debate on Tuesday, March 12. Shadow Finance Minister Julian Robinson will have his say on Thursday, March 14. Opposition Leader Mark Golding will make his contribution on Tuesday, March 19. Prime Minister Andrew Holness will speak on Thursday, March 21, and on Tuesday, March 26, the Finance Minister will close the budget debate. It's your money, our money, the nation's money. PBCJ, the People's Station, bringing you the 2024-2025 budget debates live.
I am Jamaican.
You are Jamaican. We are Jamaican. And the national budget is our business because it impacts every Jamaican. From healthcare to education
To the road conditions.
to security for my family. The national budget is my business.
No, sister. It is our business. The national budget is everybody's business because it impacts every Jamaican. Visit the Ministry of Finance's website at mof.gov.jm for more information.
Are you an entrepreneur producing an excellent Jamaican product or service? Did you know you can earn hard currency and more significant returns by exporting? Contact the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce to help propel your business along the export lane.
Everything you can produce the Jamaicans overseas want it. We're not going to get rich by just bringing down the debt. We're going to get rich by exporting a lot more. So grow exports, create job opportunities, drive economic growth through exports to make Jamaica a richer and much more prosperous country.
Today, we read from Luke 22, 47 to 51. When Jesus did still a talk, all of a sudden, one crowd come down. One of Jesus' 12 apostles them, the one we named Judas, did a lead them. Him go for kiss Jesus. But Jesus asked him, say, Judas, you are going to use one kiss and sell out the man where God pick? Jesus' special follower them, see what go happen, and say, Lord, if we take the sword and fight them? Now the leader for the priest, them servant, did dead. And one of Jesus' follower them, take him sword, chop off him right ears. Jesus say, Uno tap it. Then Jesus touched the man ears and fix it back. Luke 22, 47 to 51.
I am Jamaican.
You are Jamaican. We are Jamaican. And the national budget is our business because it impacts every Jamaican. From healthcare to education
To the road conditions.
to security for my family. The national budget is my business.
No, sister. It is our business. The national budget is everybody's business because it impacts every Jamaican. Visit the Ministry of Finance's website at mof.gov.jm for more information.
Jamaica, home of the resilient, passionate and hard-working. A people and a nation who have achieved and defied all odds, working to keep their economy growing, their country thriving, from investments made in innovative opportunities and exports demanded globally. We have a vision, now within our grasp, where Jamaica becomes the place of choice to live, work, raise families, and do business. We will not let go of this vision. We will grow. We will overcome these challenging times and look to the future with hope and positivity. These are special times. The world as we know it has changed, but home will always be in our hearts. And in Jamaica, you can always find a home. Think you know Jamaica? Look again. You will be surprised.
$1.3 trillion. That's the figure budgeted for the fiscal year 2024-2025, which begins on April 1. The national budget is everybody's business because it impacts every Jamaican. Join PBCJ via live broadcast and on our online platforms to hear how the government is proposing to use these funds. Finance Minister Dr. Nigel Clark will open the debate on Tuesday, March 12. Shadow Finance Minister Julian Robinson will have his say on Thursday, March 14. Opposition leader Mark Golding will make his contribution on Tuesday, March 19. Prime Minister Andrew Holness will speak on Thursday, March 21, and on Tuesday, March 26, the Finance Minister will close the budget debate. It's your money, our money, the nation's money. PBCJ, the People's Station, bringing you the 2024-2025 budget debates live.
Jamaica, I can help you protect our citizens.
Jamaica Eye will play a part in increasing your public safety.
Jamaica Eye is part of an island-wide network of camera surveillance systems designed to increase the safety of you, our citizens. If you have a camera system outside your home or office facing a public space, log on to jamaicai.gov.jm today. Jamaica Eye, we're all connected. The Ministry of National Security, creating a safer and prosperous Jamaica.
This is the Aedes aegypti mosquito that spreads the Zika, chikungunya, and dengue viruses. Search for its breeding sites and destroy them. This is the Aedes aegypti mosquito that spreads the Zika, chikungunya, and dengue viruses. Protect yourself from the bite of this mosquito.
A message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
Bark, bark.
Mathman, your mission is to decide if the forthcoming statements are true or false. If a statement is true, eat the letter T. If it is false, eat the letter F. You will have until the count of 7 to make your decision. And beware the surreptitious Mr. Glitch.
Nice to be back for another season.
He will cause mischief if you are wrong.
Mathman, 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 Mathman.
Yeah. True or false? You need math only in jobs where you handle money, such as being a banker.
Yeah, a banker or a math man. That's about it.
What? That's absurd. How about being a scuba diver?
Good point.
Or a choreographer?
I hadn't thought of that.
Or an airplane pilot?
I suppose you would, wouldn't you?
You use math in all these jobs. It's false.
Why am I in this business?
Woohoo! Mathman, 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 Mathman. Use your noodle. Mathman, 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 Mathman.
Nice. True or false? You don't use math outside of school.
I never use math.
Of course you use math outside of school. How about planning a meal? Or sewing a dress?
Yeah.
Or estimating how long it will take you to get home? Or counting it?
Up to 7.
What?
You ran out of time with all that preaching, Matthew. Ha-ha!
But I was right.
So, you didn't say false.
Gotta go. Mathman, 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 Mathman.
Ugh. Play by the rules, get eaten by the rules.
These two contestants, Sean Cronin and Sharifa Monteith, will separate mathematical fact from fiction. Welcome to Square One Challenge. I'm Reggie Cathy, and now let's meet the host of our show, Larry Cedar.
Hello,
What's
hello.
up, Larry?
How you doing, Red? Good to see you, guy.
Nice to see you.
All right, take it easy. Welcome to Square One Challenge. We have some great questions for you today. It's going to be a really super game, and we have some fabulous contestants. Welcome to Sharifa and Sean. It's good to have you here. All right, you know how we play the game, right? We're going to start you off each with 100 points. Boom, there they are. Let's get right to the first question. Chris has in front of him a tower made up of blocks like this one. All right? Here's the question. How many blocks altogether in that tower? There's your first question for the day, and now for some answers to that question, let's go to our guests from Square One TV, Arthur Howard and Louisa Lishin. Welcome.
Hi, guys.
Louisa, what do you think? How many blocks make up that tower?
Okay, well, I see 1 plus 3 plus 5 plus 7 blocks. 16 blocks.
Thank you very much. Louisa says 16 blocks. Arthur, what do you think?
Some of the blocks must be hidden by other blocks. I think there are 30 blocks.
Thank you very much. Arthur says 30. Louisa says 16. It's up to you to decide who's telling the truth, who's bluffing. Sometimes they both tell the truth. Sometimes they both bluff. You'll get 25 points for each correct decision. Think about it and write down your decision. How many blocks in the tower? Who's telling the truth? Who's bluffing? Time's up. Sean, what did you decide?
Well, I think that Louisa is bluffing and Arthur is telling the truth.
You think Louisa, who said 16 blocks, is bluffing, and Arthur, who said 30 blocks, is telling the truth. Let's see. Sharifa, what did you decide?
Well, I agree with Sean. I think that Louisa is bluffing and Arthur is telling the truth.
You agree. Louisa, bluffing. Arthur, telling the truth. Let's find out for our first question of the day how you did. Will the truth tellers please stand? Arthur was indeed telling the truth and Louisa was bluffing. Arthur, could you please explain your answer?
Sure. You see, each layer has a square number of blocks. You just couldn't see all of them. An easy way to add is 16 plus 4 is 20, plus 9 plus 1 equals 30.
Very good. Thank you, Arthur. Let's see how you did on our first question. Sean, correct about Louisa and Arthur, 50 points, a total of 150. Great start. Sharifa, also correct about both players, 50 points, a total of 150. Excellent start. We have a tie game going into our second question. Now, this is a video question, so pay close attention to the monitor. Here we have a statue of little Mr. Beasley. There he is on your left. Now, the statue is 12 centimeters wide at the bottom and 40 centimeters tall. Now, a scaled-up version of Beasley is hidden behind that curtain to the right there. It is in proportion. It is not distorted. But this bigger Beasley is 36 centimeters wide. Now, how high is it? The original statue is 12 centimeters wide by 40 centimeters tall. The scaled-up version, in proportion, not distorted, is 36 centimeters wide. How high is it? Louisa, what do you think?
To get from 12 to 36, multiply by 3. If you multiply 40 by 3, you get 120. So it's 120 centimeters tall. That's what I think.
120. Thank you, Louisa. Arthur, what do you think?
The smaller Beasley is 40 centimeters high and 12 centimeters wide, but he is 28 centimeters higher than he is wide. So the bigger statue is 36 plus 28 centimeters tall, 64 centimeters.
Arthur says 64 centimeters tall. Louisa says 120. Think about it. Write down your decision. Time's up. Sean, what did you decide?
I think that Louisa is telling the truth and Arthur is bluffing.
You think Louisa, who said 120 centimeters tall, is telling the truth, and Arthur, who said 64 centimeters tall, is bluffing. Thank you. Sharifa.
I think Louisa's bluffing and Arthur is bluffing.
You think that they are both bluffing. All right, let's find out who's right. For the second round question, will the truth tellers please stand? Louisa was telling the truth, and Arthur was bluffing. Louisa, would you like to explain your answer?
Sure. The big Beasley is 3 times as wide as the small Beasley. To be in proportion, the big Beasley has to be 3 times as high as the small one. 3 times 40 is 120. If the big statue had the dimensions Arthur suggested, 36 centimeters by 64 centimeters, it would look like this.
Thank you very much for that explanation. Let's see how you did, Sean and Sharifa. Sean, you were correct about Louisa and Arthur. You get 50 points for a total of 200 points. Good job. Sharifa, you were correct about Arthur only, but you will get 25 points for a total of 175. Very good job. It's a very close game, but here's your chance to seal a win or pull from behind. This is the challenge round. Now, in the challenge round, you can bet some or all of your points. You have 200 points, you have 175 points. This challenge round question deals with the subject of percentages. This question deals with percentages. So you might want to think about that now as you decide how much you want to bet and write that amount down on your wager board. All right, you've written down your wagers. I would like to tell you, however, that in the challenge round, to win, you must be correct about both Arthur and Louisa. Well, here's the challenge round question. Good luck. Chris is showing you a diagram. There are some tennis shoes. Your generous Uncle Willie is going to give you money to buy new sneakers. But he's a tricky fellow, and he says that he'll give you 60% of $80 or 80% of $60. Here's the challenge round question. Which is the greater amount? 60% of 80 or 80% of 60? Louisa, what do you think?
Well, guys, 80% is a bigger percentage, so 80% of 60 is greater.
Okay, thank you very much. Arthur?
No, 80 is bigger than 60, so when you take a percentage of 80, you get a bigger number. 60% of 80 is bigger.
Thank you, Arthur and Louisa. Think about it and write down your decisions. All right, you've had time to lock in your decisions. Sean, what did you decide?
I think that Louisa is bluffing and Arthur is telling the truth.
You think that Louisa, who said 80% of 60 is greater, is bluffing, and Arthur, who said 60% of 80 is greater, is telling the truth. Thank you. Sharifa?
Well, I think that Louisa is telling the truth and Arthur is bluffing.
Oh, just the opposite of Sean. You think Louisa is telling the truth and Arthur is bluffing. All right, for the challenge round, let's find out how you did. Will the truth tellers please stand. Actually, they were both bluffing, and let me explain to you why. 60% of $80 is $48. 80% of $60 is also $48. The same would be true for any two numbers. Let's say you pick 13 and 72. 72% of 13 is the same as 13% of 72. Either way, it's a little bit more than 9. Tough question. Let's see how you did. Now remember, you had to be correct about both players to win this round. Sean, you were unfortunately only correct about Louisa. Let's see how much you wagered. Go ahead and tell us.
I wagered 50 points.
You wagered 50 points. We'll have to subtract that from your score, leaving you a total of 150. Still a good score. Sharifa, you were only correct about Arthur. How much did you wager?
I bet 75 points.
75 points subtracted from your score leaves you with a total of 100 points, making Sean our grand prize winner. Congratulations. Fabulous game. You guys played very, very well. I must congratulate you both. Now, Sharifa, as our runner-up, you get this really cool Sport Jester gym bag. You're really going to like it. And the all-natural laser hologram calculator. It's just beautiful. Sean, as our grand prize winner, you get a Square One TV jacket. You also get some sneakers. You get a gift certificate for that. And the still waterproof Square One wristwatch. So congratulations to you both. Thanks for playing. You did a great job. We'll see you next time on Square One Challenge.
The story you are about to see is a fib, but it's short. The names are made up, but the problems are real.
It was Monday, 6:43 p.m. in New York, and Gothamites were scurrying off to their power suppers. In Monterey, California, where I was, it was 3 hours earlier. The sea otters were doing some scurrying of their own, as were the tourists on Fisherman's Wharf, the golfers on Pebble Beach, and the fish fans at the Monterey Bay Aquarium. A beautiful place, but I was there on serious business with my partner, George Franklin. The captain is Joe Greco. My name is Tuesday. I'm a mathematician. Our week got off to a rollicking start when we received a message from our California MathNet chief. Of course. Put him on, Captain Greco. Thad Green is on the phone. It had been a while since we had spoken with our mentor, who was, as usual, all business.
I went to the Museum of Modern Art this weekend.
I don't care, George. I've got a job for you, too.
What's up, Chief?
Remember the case of the Despair Diamond?
The Despair Diamond was a valuable gem which had been given to charity. It had a superstition attached to it that whoever possessed it had a lot of bad luck. We knew that was ridiculous, but a few hours later, we found ourselves on a plane bound for San Francisco, and then a short commuter flight to our destination, Monterey, California.
What did you get from the facts from Chief Green?
Well, there have been a number of jewelry heists in the area over the past few months.
Right, and the chief is pretty sure who done it.
Right, an international playboy named, what was it?
Archie Leach.
Ah, yes. Archie Leach.
For months, he's been in, around, or about every la-di-da society affair when precious jewelry was stolen.
And the police are sure he's the thief, but they can't prove it.
We were met at the Monterey airport by the head of the local police, Sheriff Mooney Rooney. He drove us to our hotel, waited for us to change clothes, and dropped us off at a fashionable estate where a preview of the charity event was taking place. To avoid suspicion, we dressed as normal millionaires and sallied forth into Northern California society. Our hostess, Lady Esther Astor Astute, introduced us to the infamous suspect.
Oh, I want you to meet some old friends, Nick and Nora Chuck of the Omaha Chucks. This is Archibald Leach.
Archie proved to be not without charm. He was a proud ne'er-do-well who excused himself early and left the party.
Hello, Mr. Leach.
Oh, darling, I fear I must be going.
No.
Shortly thereafter,
Coming from over there, George.
Outside.
Everybody okay?
I
can't believe that. I'm sure that was gunshot. Are you okay?
What is here?
Pat, guess what?
I don't want to guess, George. Why don't you just tell me?
Okay, but I bet you would never would have guessed. The Despair Diamond has been stolen.
strange place to keep that.
It is?
You don't normally keep it there?
Keep it there? I don't even know what it is.
It's a trash can, Lady Astute.
A what?
A trash can. Place where people keep trash.
Why in heaven's name would anyone want to keep trash?
Well, well, well.
Oh, he's come back to murder us in our beds.
It's just a tape recording of gunshots, Lady Astute.
You know what I think? I said, you know what I think?
No.
No, what do you think?
I think whoever stole the diamond is escaping, and he's doing it in a motorboat.
Motorboat? Archie Leach came by motorboat.
Let's get the sheriff, Rooney.
The diamond's been stolen.
Oh, no! Come
Let's hightail it to the Coast Guard station. We haven't got much time.
Right.
Sheriff, can you call the Coast Guard by radio?
You bet. Coast Guard Group, this is Sheriff Rooney. Do you read?
Sheriff Rooney, this is Coast Guard Group Monterey. I'll read you loud and clear. Go ahead.
I have a suspect fleeing the Astute Estate by boat. Request assistance. Over.
Sheriff, what does the boat look like and what direction was it headed?
Coast Guard, it's an orange and black 12-foot rubber raft headed northwest.
Roger, Sheriff. We'll send a boat to pursue and a chopper to reconnoiter. We'll keep you advised. Out.
How long will it take to spot him, Sheriff?
Well, not very long. That chopper's probably pretty close to where Archie should be right now.
Group chopper 313. Have the suspect boat in sight. Be advised, boat has just flipped over. One person is in the water. Over. Roger, chopper. Maintain your station. We're dispatching rescue vessels. Say the position of the boat. Over. East of Point Pinos. Over. Roger. 41234, we have an emergency. Overturned boat, person or persons in the water east of Point Pinos. Initiate rescue immediately.
Roger, Group.
The crew of a backup boat was waiting to take us to the scene as we pulled up to the Coast Guard station. The rescue boat was already on its way.
Stop that thing.
Are you sure you all want to come?
We're old salts, Sheriff.
Yeah, well, if that boat belongs to who I think it belongs to.
Archie Leach?
Yeah. Aren't you supposed to be undercover, folks?
Good point. He'll wonder why we're aboard.
We'll stay out of sight, Sheriff.
Good idea.
Well, 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 Sheriff Rooney, how are you? Well, I haven't seen you since...
Since the last jewel robbery?
That long, eh?
Yeah, I hope you don't mind.
Oh, not in the least. Be my guest.
Turn around. Now you're clean.
Of course I'm clean. I've been bobbing in that bay for what seems like hours.
Oh, you hurry up with those pictures. Oh.
Oh. Sheriff, would you be a dear and let me use your radio?
My radio? For what?
I'd like to call a cab.
Get one over yonder.
Bon appetit.
Bon appetit. Would you stop that?
Nothing?
Nothing. As usual, nothing. Yeah, my men are checking over the boat, but they won't find it, it's my guess.
Maybe something turned up at the Esther Astor Astute estate.
Yeah, well, I'll radio over. Getting about mealtime. They'll be checking everything out, including the stable.
Good idea. See what the boys in the tack room will have.
Yeah.
You know, Pard, if that rock isn't at the Esther Astor Astute estate, and it isn't on the boat, and Archie doesn't have it, maybe Davy Jones has got it.
Yeah, in his locker.
Would be like looking for a needle in a haystack.
Uh-huh. A very wet haystack.
Next morning found me and my partner back on the job. Sheriff Mooney Rooney and his men found no trace of the diamond on the boat or at the Esther Astor Astute estate. The hypothesis we were working on was Archie swiped the gem during the phony gunfight, escaped by boat, and when the boat flipped, the precious diamond was lost overboard. But where? We decided to use an age-old mathematical method called triangulation in order to find the approximate location of the boat when it flipped over. George got a map of Monterey Bay, and after interviewing a number of locals, we finally found someone who saw the boat go over.
Yeah, I did. It was right there.
And you were standing right here on this scenic point?
Uh-huh, and the boat was exactly lined up with that bell.
Thank you. You've been a big help.
Come on, Chrissy, we've got to go. I have to go now.
George took our chart of Monterey Harbor and drew a line from the scenic point where we were standing through the bell just offshore.
Now, we need another person who has seen the accident from another angle.
Right. And if we find that someone, we draw a second line.
Uh-huh. And where that line crosses this line, we know.
Approximately where the boat capsized.
Let's go, Pard.
We tried to find another witness to the accident to get our second fix for our triangulation. The first man we talked to hadn't seen it at all. The next two men we talked to were even less helpful. Perhaps a walk on the beach would clear our heads.
Morning, sir. Oh, isn't it? Makes a man glad to be alive.
You live around here?
Oh, not far, up Chicanery Road.
Oh, sure. That's near Eden Street.
Just east of Eden.
I'm Pat Tuesday.
She means Nora Chuck. I'm Nick Chuck.
Oh, I'm John Steenbeck.
Gee, John Steenbeck. That name sounds familiar.
Well, it should. I was in the film equipment business for years.
Mr. Steenbeck, you didn't perchance see a boat flip over on the bay yesterday, did you?
I wouldn't have if it hadn't been for old Jode.
Old Jode?
My dog, Joe. He saw it and barked, and I looked up just as the boat was swamped over.
Do you remember where you were? I mean, exactly?
Oh, yes, I do indeed. We were at the lifeguard station. Jode was using it, and it was on a direct line from the end of that log through the lifeguard station out to the boat. Hey, come in.
We've got our location, Pat.
I thought you said her name was Nora.